We definitely are taking advantage of every moment that we do have with the Chief Government Spokesperson and the Minister of Information. That's Honorable Dora Celia. Now, Honorable, we're getting into the second half of our interaction through to 14:30. I'll be able to get a few comments that are coming through via text message. I don't know whether we'll have time for the calls as well, but in a nutshell, we'll actually encourage you to make your contributions or your questions a little brief so that we get to have as much information shared with my guest on the program, and let us get interactive from that point of view. Now, Honorable, this pandemic, there's some opinions that have been shared worldwide to say this could just as well be a wake-up call to nations all over the world to kind of like have a lot more investment in their respective health sectors. Is that the case with Zambia as well?
Well, look, I think that there should be a silver lining. Like we said, if China is anything to go by, that it started in December, and by March, they have found days when they're not recording any more infections. So you're thinking that it's a 3-month cycle. And if that should give us any lessons, is that maybe the worst we should be preparing for is that this is a 3-month cycle. But in that 3 months, the devastation, the destruction we have seen in the epicenter, such as Europe, with countries such as Italy, the destruction we have seen in the second epicenter, which is the US, and now what we are seeing here in Africa with Egypt and South Africa, we should be saying, if this is a 3 months, but what will we look like at the end of those 3 months, especially a small country like Zambia with a fragile economy? What will we look like? So we must be thinking about going forward, what should be the opportunities. I think that the bigger countries, the more developed countries, will also have to consider that forging partnership with countries such as in Africa in terms of manufacturing, for example, of drugs, of health equipment is important, because if it's in this part of the world at one point, at least you have supplies in another part of the world. And when it moves to pandemic moves to this part of the world, then at least there's space in the other part of the world. And what we are seeing now, that the concentration of world trend, because this pandemic is moving everywhere. So maybe those are the lessons for all of us to be learning, that beyond just sovereignty, we are all connected as a globe, as a people, and this disease doesn't see color, it doesn't see whether a country is wealthy or not. It's time to reflect, I think, at family level, that what are the lessons to be learned here, to going back to family ties, to basics, to prayer, to doing things as a family, as a community, to having a common goal. So you could be right that indeed this disease in a life must start with me first.
Okay, all right. This message reads, good afternoon, Lorenzo and the minister. Good topic. What measures have you put in place in the health sector, in these health institutions, to reduce overcrowding? And there are a few nurses and clinical officers. Do you intend to beef up manpower to combat this deadly virus? Have you done sensation in rural areas to teach them about this disease? In churches, you say just an hour, but bars operating more than 2 hours. Can you put
those districts? And I think that in the country, we should give ourselves a pat on the back that the proliferation of radios in this country, specifically radios, and I think online media, has worked positively in this instance to take the message to the last house, to every mile. But we continue to do that because we can't stop. I was just speaking to the permanent secretary, Amos Malukenga, before I came here, and it is a bar or it is a church. Government makes decisions on evidence. The evidence that we had in terms of risk first was that a spread in the epicenter, especially, very, very concerned about that long gathering because when people go to worship and prayer, they are coming from all sectors, and it's not so much like a choice that you have to go to a bar and you don't have to go. People who go to church feel they must go to church, and that was of great concern. And also, that was also linked to the fact that our neighbors in the south, South Africa, we are getting cases accelerated, and we have a lot of Zambians going to South Africa on buses as traders, and that when they go there, they go and visit churches, and that then they'll come back here and be in churches And that was of great concern to the Minister of Health. So he's giving us evidence-based information. And then, and so that is the issue about churches. There is no comparison here, but because it's a church and because it's about, I think that the issue, then the Minister of Local Government is saying, I need hotels. Should I close bars in shopping malls? Should I close saloons? Because for me, even the people in saloons are exposed. Should I close barber shops? So the Minister, if we are then going to limit public gathering, then should we stop public transport? Now, that means a total shutdown because very few people have cars. The majority of citizens use public transport from A to B. So government is just saying, give us time and room to make decisions that are evidence-backed. We don't want knee-jerk. We don't want copy and paste because that country is doing it. We have a very specific condition here, especially as a landlocked country also, and also the state of our economy and our cultures. So we need to make decisions that even the citizens can appreciate, that if government says, please, it's important that we stay at home. If we don't have to leave the house, let's not leave it. If you have a flu now, you should be at home. This is the first time everybody gets away with, I have a flu, I can't come to work. If you have a flu, please stay at home. If you know somebody who has a flu and they're at the office, please report them so that they can go home. If you know somebody who's come from unnecessary travel out of the country and they want to be up and about, please report them. Because then that's the only way we can save ourselves. The hospitals, the Minister of Health might have prepared isolation centers, might be having serious surveillance at point of entry. Buses from South for now are diverted from intercity to the dry port. But we don't want to get to a place as we have seen in other jurisdictions where so many people get sick so quickly at once that even the health system is overwhelmed. Even the nurses and the doctors are overwhelmed. We don't want to get to that point. So we are saying, if we work now, we could just remain at these 3 cases, but we have to be each brother's keeper, each neighbor's keeper, each sister's keeper. Meaning, if you can isolate yourself as a family as much as possible, please let us do that. Let us avoid loitering in shopping malls, in government buildings, in studios. Let us avoid all this loitering. Let us only do what is critical at this point in time to share information about COVID-19, about this coronavirus, and tell our relatives, please, you don't have to come to my house. Stay there. Maybe spend more time now with your children. We have said schools are closed. We're not saying now the children should be in the shopping malls. The university students now should be in bars. No, we are saying, please stay at home. You could save a life.
All right. He inquired about staffing,
yes,
increasing manpower.
Of course. Again, this is what I'm saying, that while people might think that government has not been active, the last 2 weeks, all I have heard from the Minister of Health is about putting in place a plan. And you know now that this response of against the coronavirus has been upscaled now to the Council of Ministers. All the Minister of Health has been doing is asking his colleagues and saying, look, the support he needs is to make sure that if it is possible, he can get more staff. In other countries, we've seen even retired staff called back because the situation is so overwhelming. What we are saying is that we don't want to get there in Zambia. But the only way we are not going to get there is each one of us observes the rules. If you don't have to go to the shop, please don't go. To keep our places clean, everybody must play their part, whether it's in a market, everywhere we are. We are used to saying, oh, our markets is where there's garbage and there are dirty places. No, and government has to consider and is not shy to make the tough decisions. But we have to consider that, look, we don't want people to get into the hospitals and overwhelm the system. For now, the minister is still having manageable numbers, but we don't want to push ourselves to the limit where we'll be saying there are so many sick people and now the Ministry of Health will be so overwhelmed, but that it will be difficult to respond. We need to keep people out of hospitals. That should be number one message. Keep people out of hospitals because they are isolating themselves, because they are not going to public gatherings. I have seen the jokes about, oh, no football, what will we be doing at home? It is time to know your children and your wife better. It is time to learn how to pray with your children. to eat with your children, to read with your children. Doesn't know isolation is difficult. People don't really want to be at home. They want to be all over the place. But for this disease, what we are learning, all of us world over, is that if we isolate ourselves for a period of time, then we can conquer it. So we all have to be disciplined. The worst to be government to say, okay, now this is no more a choice. No gathering. Every single person must be in their house. And the president has to say, okay, what are the implications of this? The defense forces, the police, and what are the logistics in place, and so on. We are trying so hard to ensure we don't get there. But government is not shy of getting there. But right now, we have to depend on Public Health Institute and the Ministry of Health to give us measures that are informed for government to make decisions.
All right, this message reads, Hi, Honorable. In other countries, they're having a lockdown and others are closing borders and airports. But why is the Zambian government not taking that step? Are you waiting for the worst? The worst to happen is when you take that step. And then he adds, President Hakainde Hichilema said in his briefing that he will work with the ruling party. Honorable, are you welcoming this move from the United Party for National Development or not?
On the issues of airports and borders and so on, again, I said earlier this morning at one other platform, I think that this is an issue that needs a critical evaluation in a very specific environment. Other countries, you must not compare apples and oranges. Other countries may have the privilege to say, you know what, the sea is all in front of us, let's close the land borders. And Zambia hasn't got that privilege. We don't have that luxury. We have to say we have so many neighbors, and we need fuel in the country, even to move the same drugs and logistics that we need to maintain this. And even now, we have to ask, what are the implications that if South Africa is on a lockdown tomorrow, what are the implications for Zambia? Does that mean our fuel can't come through? And that causes a real nightmare for us as a country. That yes, while you are trying to do that, but also remember us, we're also dependent on these routes for other logistics and so on. So bilateral discussions are going on in the SADC regions among presidents, among ministers of foreign affairs. Just last week, the Minister of Foreign Affairs was having a SADC interaction via internet to be able for us to have common responses. So it is very important that we remember that this is not a copy and paste. There are specific scenarios so unique just to Zambia, one of them being landlocked. And when we take decisions, it must be commensurate with what the issues on the ground are. The issues of stakeholders, I think there are a lot of stakeholders working with government, whether it's political parties, donors, NGOs. Citizens are the biggest stakeholder for government. The citizens, they need to survive. I do not believe that this is the time for us to be talking about, oh, it's this political party or that political party. As far as government is concerned, the biggest stakeholder right now are the people of Zambia. And those that want to work with government will come forward and show their support. We've seen it in other countries. And this is the opportune time for every Zambian to be patriotic. We are only preoccupied with the Zambians at this point in time because like I said, just 3 cases is too much for a country like us, and we need to remain focused as government. Other people could have the luxury of just making comments and recommendations. For President Edgar Lungu, he hasn't got that luxury. He has to make sure that, if possible, no life should be lost. Is preoccupied with trying to see how do we respond in a measured manner but effective manner, and how do we get the Zambians on board? Because unless
let us report on the 3 infected people in the country. How is the state? How are they recovering? Particularly the 2 lovebirds that had gone to France and are back. How are they recuperating?
Yesterday, cabinet was updated. At least the information I have is from yesterday. I'm sure that the Minister of Health will be giving the country an update as soon as he's able to. But as of yesterday, when the permanent secretary, Dr. Malama, gave an update to cabinet, is that look, The 3 people who are isolated at Levi Mwanawasa are doing well. And if I recall, he said that they are not even on ventilators, meaning that they have responded well to whatever drugs are being given and to whatever the immunity issues towards against this disease. I'm not a doctor, but I think that the simple language is that they are doing well, and so far they are still there. So this is good for us as a country. But we want to keep it at only these 3 numbers. Now, unfortunately, human beings are people that like to be in contact and in touch with others. So Ministry of Health is busy tracing every possible person they would have come into contact with, and those people have been under quarantine, and those people have been followed up every time. In fact, anybody who has been arriving in Zambia from a country where we think that there's high risk has been put on mandatory self-quarantine. And what that means is not that they just leave you. They follow you every day, even twice a day sometimes, to make sure that they are observing, they are checking these signs. And today, this morning, I was speaking to Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba. I was very, very happy. He informed me that through Ethiopia, they were facilitating the onward movement of cargo from the Chinese billionaire, I think, from the Ma Foundation, yes, who has made a contribution to Zambia. I think it's 100,000 masks, if I'm not, no, 100, yeah, I think 100,000 masks, 20,000 test kits, and 1,000 personal protective wear for our health officials. So we are not an island. We are not an isolated country. We've received a lot of support from the Americans. The ambassador, Chargé d'Affaires, called me himself, David Young, to assure me of the support. He met with the president. He met with the Minister of Health. Also, the British government, the United Kingdom, given us support, the EU, because we're not an island, and everybody understands that nobody can win this alone. We all have to help each other. And as a country, we're extremely grateful, just like we are very, very humbled by the sacrifice of those who are in the front line. Because as of now, if you feel ill and you walk in any hospital now, whether it's UTH or it's CFB or it's Hilltop, I mean, people are first just suspicious and scared because they don't know what else they are going to live there, you know. So we know that our staff in the health sector are also just human beings. They're terrified to get this and take it home. We've seen in other jurisdictions doctors die. So they're also just human beings who are also concerned about their own families. And we want to keep them as protected as much as possible. And if possible, even give counseling, psychological counseling, so that they are mentally prepared to do this job, which is not an easy job at this point in time.
All right. Are you able to tell us what tracking mechanism you've put in place for those other passengers that you've identified from that aircraft manifest, of those 2 and the gentleman that came from Pakistan? What tracking mechanism are you using to?
I am aware that on that aircraft there were 82 Zambians who disembarked, and clearly Ministry of Health, it's not 2 weeks yet for the quarantine to end. So Ministry of Health has been tracking those people and making sure that they're on self-quarantine. And I'm sure that at the next update by the Minister of Health, we should be able to get the status of those people, if anyone has developed. But up to now, we have been told there have not really been any new cases. The gentleman who went to Pakistan was also in a party of 12, and meaning that all the others have been put on the same program to be monitored. And this is not the first time. There have been other Zambians who and visitors to Zambia who've been on this program because they came from high-risk countries. There was an alert in terms of surveillance at point of entry, and they've been quarantined, and after 2 weeks, they've been released. So let us all just keep praying. Let us all keep our fingers crossed that can we just stay at these 3 cases, and that they should not increase, because if they increase, it means that there are still more people in contact with so many people, and the chain just keeps going. Then you lose control so quickly. And that's why the Minister of Health and government in general, and even including His Excellency, has been very strong about, if we can avoid the gathering, if we don't have to go to a gathering, please let us do as much as we can. Let us have social distancing. As I can see here, we have very good social distancing. Let us keep our hands clean. Let us stay at home if you have a cough. Don't travel. Don't get out of Zambia unless it's life and death. And we're asking that also people, please don't come to Zambia in cases. And government is working. There's no sleeping now. It's 24 hours. Every minister, the Minister of Energy is busy saying, how can he help, especially in terms of supporting water companies with water provision in high density areas. The Minister of Water is concerned, how can I ensure that I quickly begin to distribute water with water bowsers in high density areas. The Minister of Commerce is concerned that in the worst case scenario, is the country prepared in terms of food, in terms of imported stuffs, in terms of drugs and so on, which is also the concern of the Minister of Health. The Minister of Local Government is concerned the worst case scenario that he must say shut down small businesses, shut down markets. What are the implications? What do we do? The Minister of Transport is concerned about, are buses the best place for people? What do we do? Can we sanitize them? I'm aware tomorrow that one of the operators, don't be on a bus. You are putting other people at risk. If you've been in a bus, when you get out, please make sure you go to the nearest place to wash your hands if you don't have sanitizers. And I think those are the two important messages. If you have a cough, don't be on a bus. Don't be in a market. Don't be in a saloon. Don't be in a barber shop. Don't go to a church service. Please don't go to any gathering. Try as much as possible to save other people. And at the earliest convenience, please, if you have been in contact with a person like this, you have to try and make sure that you wash your hands and you wash your face. I think those two are the most important messages.
All right. In conclusion, Honorable Minister, how do you wrap up our special interview for today?
I believe that so far by government has been the right response. In fact, speaking to others such as the Chargé d'Affaires, the American Chargé d'Affaires, and even other cooperating partners, they have really given kudos to the Public Health Institute and the Ministry of Health for putting in place very quick response, even before we had a case, because this is about communication. It's not about treatment, because at this point, first of all, there is no vaccine. So it's not about treatment. It's not about being in the hospital, because you'll only survive because of God's grace and that your body is strong enough for you to survive. So at this point, the best response by government has been to disseminate information for us to do what we're doing on this radio. And I think that because of that, the public should have confidence. After that, we all should be each other's keeper. Look after your family, look after your neighbor by making sure that we report possible cases of this disease. We should all be alert. Nobody should take it for granted and say, it can't affect me. It only affects those people. No, it can affect anybody. And this myth about, no, it only affects people of certain race and not other people is not true. And that, no, it only affects people in cold countries and not hot countries. All that is not true. What is true is that this disease, the more you isolate yourself, the better chances we have to stop the spread of this disease. We want to keep it at 3. We want to keep it at minimum levels. We don't want it to spread, but it depends on us having the discipline. Don't go to the market. Don't go to the shopping mall. Don't go to work, especially if you're sick. Let us reduce, if we don't have to go to restaurants, to bars, to churches. We don't have to at this point.